Good day everyone. Our topic for today is all about joint and combined variation. So let's start. Since we're done in direct and inverse variation, so dito na tayo sa joint and combined variation. Ang tanong, ano ba yung joint variation and combined variation? So let's start with joint variation. It is a situation where one variable depends on two or more other variables and varies directly as each of them when the others are held constant. Now, for example, suppose that z varies jointly as x and y. So yung ating variation equation looks like this. So we have z is equal to, and then pa rin yung ating constant of variation, so we have k times x times y. Next, how about combined variation? Combined variation, it is a situation where a variable depends on two or more other variables and varies directly with some of them and varies inversely with others. In short, yung joint variation kanina is puro siya varies directly. While in combined variation, ito ay halo. Merong varies directly at merong varies inversely. Now, for example, suppose that z varies directly as x and inversely as y. So yung ating variation equation can be rewritten as z is equal to, we have k times x divided by y. Now, ito yung kailangan tandaan. Pag nakita natin yung word na directly, sinasabi sa atin na iyon ay imumultiply natin. Now, pag nabasa natin yung varies inversely, sinasabi sa atin na iyon ay dapat i-divide natin. Okay? So, ito yung mga clue word natin. Varies directly, i-multiply natin, while inversely, kailangan natin siyang i-divide. Now, let's have some example. So, write an equation to express each of the following relations using k as the constant of variation. So, number 1, the area of the rectangle varies jointly as its length and width. Number 2, the volume of a cylinder varies jointly as the area of its base and the height. Number 3, the shape load for a horizontal beam supported at both ends varies jointly as the width and the square of the depth and inversely as the distance between the two supports. Number 4, the stiffness of a beam varies jointly as its breadth and depth and inversely as the square of its length. Now, let us answer number 1. The area of the rectangle varies jointly as its length and width. Now, kagaya ng ginagawa natin sa direct variation and inverse variation, kukunin lang natin yung mga clue words dito. Now, in this case, meron tayo ditong area, so represent natin siya as A. We have the length and the width, so represent natin siya as L and W. Next, yung main clue natin dito is yung word na varies jointly. Now, anong ibig sabihin kapag varies jointly? Kailangan nating i-multiply ang alin? Yung length and yung width. So, we have the area is equal to K times L times W. And we're done. Now, let's move on to question number 2. The volume of a cylinder varies jointly as the area of its base and the height. Now, ito yung mga clue word. Yung volume, area of the base, and yung height. At yung pinaka-main clue natin is varies jointly. Pag nabasa natin yung varies jointly, kailangan nating mag-multiply. Ano yung multiply natin? Yung area ng base and yung height. So, we have the volume is equal to K times, yung area ng base, gawin natin siyang A sub B, times yung height natin is H. So, we have K times A sub B times H, and we're done. Now, let's have the solution for number 3 and number 4. So, number 3. The shape load for a horizontal beam supported at both ends varies jointly as the width and the square of the depth and inversely as the distance between the two supports. Now, hanapin natin yung mga clue word. So, yung clue word natin is yung varies jointly. Ibig sabihin, meron tayong imumultiply. Ang tanong, ano yung imumultiply natin? So, imumultiply natin yung width and the square of the depth. Next, ano pa yung mga clue na meron tayo? So, makikita natin yung word na inversely. Ibig sabihin, meron tayong i-divide. Ano i-divide natin? Yung distance between the two supports. Now, lagyan natin ng mga letter. Yung shape load, gawin natin siyang L. Yung width, gawin natin siyang W. Square ng depth. Ang depth is lalim, so gawin natin siyang L squared. And the distance, gawin natin siyang D. So, we have L is equal to K times width and the square of the depth. So, we have K times W times L squared. Kasi ito ay varies jointly. Again, pag sinabing jointly, ito ay imumultiply natin. Now, inversely, nung nabasa natin yung inversely, ito ay division. Ano i-divide natin? Yung distance. Kaya yung distance ay nasa denominator. So, we have over D. And we're done. Now, let's have the solution for number 4. The stiffness of a beam varies jointly as its breadth and depth and inversely as the square of its length. Now, hanapin natin yung mga clue words. So, ano ba yung mga clue words natin? Varies jointly, ibig sabihin meron tayong imumultiply. Now, ano yung multiply natin? Yung breadth and depth. Next, nabasa natin yung word na inversely, ibig sabihin meron tayong i-divide. Ano naman yung i-divide natin? Yung square of its length. Now, gawa tayo ng equation. We have stiffness, represent natin siya as S, is equal to varies jointly, so ito ay nakamultiply sa K. So, we have K times breadth times depth. So, we have K times B times D. Now, since we have inversely, meron tayong division, so divided by square of its length. When we say square, kailangan naka-squared. So, we have L raised to 2, and we're done. Now, let's try to answer some word problems involving joint and combined variation. So, let's start. So, solve the following problems below. Number 1. If z varies jointly as y and x, and z is equal to 12 when x equals to 2 and y is equal to 4, find z when y is equal to 3 and x is equal to 5. Number 2. A plus 2 varies directly as b minus 2 and inversely as 3c plus 1. If a is equal to 2 when b is equal to 7 and c is equal to 3, find b when a is equal to 5 and c is equal to 1. Number 3. The electric resistance of a wire made of a certain material varies directly as its length and inversely as the square of the diameter. If the wire 30 meters long with a diameter of 0.75 millimeters has a resistance of 25 ohms, find the length of a wire of the same material whose resistance and diameter are 30 ohms and 1.25 millimeter respectively. Now, let's have the solution for number 1. So, we have the first sentence. Z varies jointly as y and x. So, varies jointly, meron tayong imumultiply. Ano yung multiply natin? Yung y and x. So, we have z is equal to k times y times x. Next step natin, kagaya ng pagkukompute natin sa direct and inverse variation, kailangan makuha muna natin yung constant of variation and then gagawa tayo ng equation. So first, hanapin muna natin yung constant of variation. So paano natin gagawin yun? Doon tayo sa pangalawang sentence. Z is equal to 12 when x equal to 2 and y is equal to 4. So yung z, papalitan natin ng 12, yung x papalitan natin ng 2, at yung y papalitan natin ng 4. Therefore, we have 12 is equal to k times 4 times 2. Simplify natin, we have 12 is equal to 8k. Now, divide both sides by 8. We have 12 over 8. Now, lowest term natin or simplify, we get 3 over 2 is equal to k. Now, ano yung gagawin natin dito sa constant of variation? Ipapalit natin dun sa ating equation para magkaroon tayo ng joint variation equation. So, we have z is equal to 3 over 2 times y times x. Now, in this case, pinalitan lang natin yung value ng k. Ginawa natin siyang 3 over 2. Kagaya na nakuha natin na value niya. Next, since meron tayong equation, pwede natin sagutan yung tanong. So, ano ba yung question? Find c when y is equal to 3 and x equal to 5. So, anong gagawin natin doon? Yung z yung hinahanap natin, so ibig sabihin, wala tayong ipapalit sa letter z. Yung y, papalitan natin ng 3 at yung x, papalitan natin ng 5. So, we have z is equal to 3 over 2 times 3 times 5. Now, yung 3, meron niyang over 1 at yung 5 meron ding over 1. So, we have 3 times 3 times 5 or simply 45. And yan sa denominator natin, 2 times 1 times 1 or simply 2. So, we have z is equal to 45 over 2 or simply 22.5. And we're done. Now, let's move on to question number 2. A plus 2 varies directly as b minus 2 and inversely as 3c plus 1. Yung first sentence, sinasabi sa atin na gumawa tayo ng equation. So, we have a plus 2 varies directly, ibig sabihin nakamultiply ang alin? Yung b minus 2. And inversely, pag nabasa yung inversely, magdi-divide tayo. Ano i-divide natin? Yung 3c plus 1. So, yung equation natin must be a plus 2 is equal to k times b minus 2 divided by, kasi may inversely, and ano yung i-divide natin? Yun yung 3c plus 1. Now, ito yung ating equation. Now, kapag ganito na yung ating situation na napakaraming variable, medyo nalilito na tayo, do what you know, and the rest, it will follow. So, ibig sabihin lang, ituloy natin yung ating ginagawa. As long na wala tayong ginagawang mali, as long na sinusunod natin yung concept, hindi tayo magkakamali. Okay? So, tapos na tayo sa first sentence, doon na tayo sa pangalawa. If A is equal to 2, when B is equal to 7, and C is equal to 3. So, anong gagawin natin? Yung A daw papalitan ng 2, yung B papalitan ng 7, at yung C papalitan ng 3. So, gawin lang natin yon. So, we have 2 plus 2 is equal to K times 7 minus 2 all over 3 times 3 plus 1. Yung A naging 2, yung B naging 7, at yung C, pinalitan natin ng 3. Next, simplify natin. So, we have 4 is equal to K times 5. 7 minus 2 is 5. All over 3 times 3 plus 1 or simply 10. Next, kapag ganito na equation natin, medyo familiar na tayo dyan. So, cross-multiply lang natin. We have 40 is equal to 5K. Now, divide both sides by 5. We get 8 is equal to K. In this case, mayroon na tayong value ng constant of variation. After that, ipapalit lang natin dun sa ating equation. So, we have A plus 2 is equal to 8 times B minus 2 all over 3C plus 1. Now, since meron tayong equation, wala na tayong variable K, pwede na natin sagutan yung tanong. So, ano ba yung question? Find B when A is equal to 5 and C is equal to 1. So, anong ibig sabihin sa atin ito? Hinahanap natin yung B, ibig sabihin hindi natin papalitan yung variable na B. Ano yung papalitan natin? Yung A, papalitan natin ng 5, at yung C, papalitan natin ng 1. So, ganun na yung gagawin natin. I-substitute na natin. So, we have 5 plus 2 is equal to 8 times B minus 2. Hindi natin magagalawin yung B. All over 3 times 1 plus 1. So, yung A naging 5, at yung C naging 1. Now, simplify. We get 7 is equal to 8 times B minus 2 all over 4. Next, cross-multiply natin para mawala yung fraction. So, we have 28 is equal to 8b minus 16. Distribute na natin yung 8. So, 8 times b, we have 8b. 8 times negative 2, we have negative 16. Next, lipat yung 16 sa kabila or simply add 16 both sides. So, we have 44 is equal to 8b. Next, divide both sides by 8. We get 44 over 8 is equal to b. Next, kailangan tandaan na palagi dapat naka-lowest term or simplify. So, divide ba natin by 4? So, we get 11 over 2 or simply 5.5. And we're done. Now, let's move on to question number 3. So, medyo mahaba, pero basahin natin yung first sentence. The electrical resistance of a wire made of a certain material varies directly. So, nakakita tayo ng varies directly. Ibig sabihin, meron tayong i-multiply. Ano yung multiply natin? Yung length. Okay? And inversely, mag-divide tayo ng alin? Square of diameter. So, sa first sentence, sinasabi sa atin na gumawa na tayo ng equation. So, we have R for resistance is equal to varies directly as its length. So, K times L. Then, inversely, di-divide natin saan? Square of the diameter. So, don't forget na i-square natin yung diameter or D squared. Now, meron na tayong equation. Next, paano natin hahanapin yung variable K? So, dun sa second sentence tayo. So, sabi dito, if a wire 30 meter long with a diameter of 0.75 mm has a resistance of 25 ohms. So, yung 25 ohms, yun yung resistance. Yung 0.75 mm, yun yung diameter. And yung 30 meters long, yun yung length. So, palitan natin. So, we have 25 is equal to K times 30, kasi ito yung length. All over, yung diameter natin is 0.75 millimeters or 0.75 squared. Next, do what you know. Simplify muna natin. So, we have 25 is equal to K times 30 all over 0.75 squared or simply 0.5625. Next, cross-multiply natin. We get 14.0625 is equal to 30K. Divide natin lahat by 30. We get 0.46857 is equal to K. Now, double check muna natin yung mga values natin. Kuha tayo ng calculator. Okay, so dun muna tayo sa umpisang step natin. 25 times 0.75 squared. So we have 25 times 0.75 squared para sure tayo. Equal sign, gawin natin decimal. So tama naman tayo. Then divided by 30. Then equal sign. Pwede siyang gawing fraction na 15 over 32. Or in decimal, we have 0.46875. Therefore, our answer is correct. So, pwede na tayo mag-continue. Now, ipapalit natin yung value ng K dun sa ating equation. So, we have R is equal to 0.46875 times L divided by D squared. Now, since meron tayong equation, pwede na natin sagutin kung ano man yung tinatanong. So, find the length of the wire of the same material whose resistance and diameter are 30 ohms and 1.5 millimeter respectively. So, dito, nawawala yung L given yung R or yung resistance and yung ating diameter. Substitute lang natin. So, we get 30 is equal to 0.46875 times L divided by 1.25 squared. Next, gamit na tayo ng calculator para i-compute tong bagay na to. So, kuha tayo ng calculator. So, we have 30 times 1.25 squared or cross-multiply natin. So, we have 30 times 1.25 squared equal natin. So, gawin natin decimal. Next, i-divide natin sa 0.46875. So, divided by 0.46875. And then, equal sign. And we get 100. Therefore, yung length is equivalent to 100. Now, don't forget, ano yung unit ng 100? Yung length natin is in terms of meters. Therefore, ito ay 100 meters. And we're done.